Hey everyone, I don't know about you, but I'm ready for some coffee. My favorite spot, because of the people, because of the coffee beans, all the good stuff, is Cafe 211 in Bentonville. If you're not in the Northwest Arkansas area, though, Cafe 211 also offers their beans and their coffee mugs deliverable, I think, nationwide. So you can create that whole experience from your home. Mauricio Guerrero is the founder of Cafe 211. He is from Guatemala and his coffee is from Guatemala as well. There's a beautiful story that's tied to it. I encourage you to check out the Cafe 211 website, check out Mauricio's story, the story of the coffee and the people who make it, and go ahead and buy some and we can sip it together during our next conversation. And you can use the discount code Cara Elvira 10 to get a 10% discount on your order. Good evening, Carolyn Thome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I feel I would spend a lot of time in the sun today, and as a grad student, that's a rare occurrence. And I'm feeling a
Yeah.
little bit of like heat fatigue or something. Like I need to refuel, get a water IV or something. But I'm also so thankful to have gotten to go outside. Are you having a good summer? Are you doing any outdoor exploring?
I'm doing some of my regular little hikeabouts, looking for things in the woods that are interesting.
Very cool. And you're in the northeast-ish
Yep,
region. Where are you on the map?
we're in Maryland.
So nice. Are
Yeah.
you like the coastal part of Maryland or more
No,
in?
we're about an hour northwest of DC. We're right. Our house is, well, we're not on the Potomac, but the town is right along the Potomac River.
Oh my gosh, I feel like there would be no shortage of
Yeah,
epic outdoor adventures or leisurely outdoor walks.
yeah,
Just so many nice
there's plenty.
experiences. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you for,
Yep,
coming indoors to have a little chat with me today.
sure.
For those who do not know you, this is Carolyn Thome. She is a model maker and photographer, and I'm so excited to learn more about your story today, and your awesome skill set. So thank you again. Um,
Sure.
Carolyn, I'd love to start with your personal background, your origins of your interest in these different disciplines.
Okay. So, let's see. I think most of my life I've been a photographer. I mean, I think I remember in fourth grade, I probably had a camera. Um, and I've always had a camera. So I've had every from, the tiny little rectangular box cameras. I don't even know what they're called anymore. But yeah, I've always had one with me. I've always taken tons of photographs. Um, so it's just a medium that's just, it's a great, I love documenting. So that's just such an easy way to document. And plus now with having a camera with you all the time anyway with your phone, it's a whole nother world. It's awesome. I love it. I love having it. Um, and so I like photography. I liked art. I knew I was not going to be uh, going to school for engineering or law or anything like that. Um, I was more towards the arts. So high school I studied photography and whatever electives were art. That's what I did, and then I ended up going to University of the Arts in Philadelphia, and got my degree in industrial design, but I had a second sort of, it wasn't officially a second major, but I studied photography also. And the industrial design education led to model making. And I wanted to, after college, I wanted to work in movies or TV. I didn't care. I didn't care what I did. I just wanted to be in that atmosphere. So I moved out to LA and had some wonderful relatives who put me up for a few months until I got on my feet, and then got a job working on a movie called Dark Man, and I made uh, tiny little scale porta potties and ladders and things that went into a model that was part of the movie. And believe it or not, that movie had Liam Neeson and Frances McDormand in it. which
You have to be
is,
in a room with Liam Neeson on the
I
same
did not see either of, I didn't see either of them.
Carolyn. Those are the photos I want to see.
Yeah, no, we were an effects company, and that's, I think we had Liam Neeson's stunt double, and that was it.
Pretty close. That's a degree closer than I've ever been.
That's true.
That's
But I did get to meet the director, Sam Raimi, who's a super nice guy. He did all the Evil Dead movies. But then I was there for about 2 years and worked on various things, some TV movies and commercials, and other films. It was fun. It was a lot of fun, a lot of long hours, and then a lot of free time when you weren't working. So it was a little tough. I didn't make tons of money, but I had a lot of fun. And then my eyes started burning because of the smog. This was like the late 80s, early 90s. And the smog was really bad in LA. And I missed my family. All my family was on the East Coast. So I came back and back to Maryland, and did some freelance model making, and worked at Nordstrom making props for all of their stores on the East Coast. And then after I did that for a short period of time, and then I got the job I have now. Back in '92, I got a job at the Smithsonian making models for exhibits. So if an exhibit needed some kind of replica, that's what our office would do. So my first job there was making a fake tree, like a quarter section of a tree that sat in a corner of the insect zoo, which was just opening up, and it had a beehive carved out, and there was an active beehive inside this fake tree that we made.
Oh wow.
And I sculpted some bugs that were cast in bronze, and that is when I met my future husband too. So right on that project.
Love story in here. There's Hollywood, literally. There's nature.
That's right.
Museums are touching on all of the great topics. So that's a wonderful backdrop. Thank you. And I can't wait to dive more into the museum part of your life later in this conversation, but I'm going to focus on the photo related things that you just spoke about to get us started or to continue this story. I think it must have been so cool to be in California in the late 80s time period and working in Hollywood. You mentioned, having a camera since you were 4 and that being part of your life. Now it seems like nature is a pretty important theme to the work that you're doing. Was that the same when you were in California, or what were you photographing while you were growing up? How did your love of capturing like different elements of nature come into the equation?
That's funny because most of my life I was capturing just friends and family, and maybe some, I don't know, like street photography really is what I really liked to do when I was younger. And it's only been in the last, I don't know, it's probably my husband's fault, but in the last 20 years that I've really started to really take notice of nature. I've always been like the outdoors, but never really looked into smaller things. So I think it's, just trying to think of why. I think I started to fish more. We started to take trips where we went camping, and you just start to notice all the little things around you, especially when you go camping and you can't get away from it. But what started my nature photography was, I asked a friend of mine to take me with him when he went morel hunting, and so he graciously did. Not many morel hunters will do that because they keep their places secret. But he took me with him and showed me what to look for. They're really hard to find if you don't have a lot of practice. So and they're under, you know, specific trees and hillsides facing different directions, and it's just all and then sometimes they just pop up out of nowhere. But you need to know where they've grown in the past, because almost definitely you can find them there again. And so once he showed me that, I was just like, I'm going to go find them on my own. This is cool. This is good. And I didn't. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how do people find these things? And so what that led to was me noticing all the other mushrooms that were popping up. And apparently that year, which is like maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I started, that year was like the best year for mushrooms. My friend said, he's like, oh my gosh, you picked the perfect year to start looking for mushrooms. Yeah, it was like the weather, the temperature, the rainfall, all that was all perfect. And so it's just, they were everywhere. So that coincided with getting my studio set up. So for my 50th birthday, my husband outfitted the space I'm in now, or just actually, he didn't even outfit, he built the walls and all that and put in all the power and all the lights. There's more lights in here than it's on now, and said, you know, this is your space. And he's an artist, so he has, and that's his full-time job. So he makes money off of it. So he has, rightfully so, the most space in this building.
Right.
But anyway, so now I have this space, which is mine, and sounds childish, but it's like, you know, nobody can tell me to clean up.
It's not the greatest.
It's the best. So I don't have to share it with anybody. So it's my little happy space. You know, if I feel like I need to clean, I'll clean up. So anyway, so that, finding all those little mushrooms, then having a space where I could do whatever I wanted, got me to start doing the studio photography of all these mushrooms, and other little plants and whatever weird stuff I find when I'm out in the woods.
Yes. So I love that, you know, noticing and appreciating the world around us, and especially the everyday world around us. Like, you don't have to go to Timbuktu to see it. Like, this is on your nature walks in your neighborhood.
Right.
I love that that's a part of your story. I wonder too, so to me, there's like quite a few steps in being a photographer and in capturing the nature, right? You have to go into the nature, you find the thing, you bring it back,
Right.
you stage it, you edit it. Like, I don't know, there's probably a lot. I wondered if you could speak a little bit to what your process is like, and maybe the timeline. I'm an operations sort of person, so that's always interesting to me. But also, like, what are your favorite moments in that process? Is it seeing the final product? Is it the studio experience with the thing you've discovered? I don't know.
My favorite part, I'll answer that one first. I think is after I take the first set of images that I like. I think that's the part that I like it all too. So, but that's like, for me, that's the peak to see, oh yeah, that's perfect, beautiful. But I love everything else that leads up to it. So so I'll go out, and if sometimes I find, if it's a good, you know, after a good rain and it's not too hot, it's not too cold, I'll go out and I'll find like 10 mushrooms that I want to photograph. And I have to gauge, since I go to work during the day, it's usually on my way home, and I'll have to gauge how much time I want to spend that night. So photographing. So if I go out and I find 10 mushrooms that I gotta photograph, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so exhausted tomorrow, because I know that's at least 5 hours of my time in the studio just to capture them before they, you know, they start to deteriorate after I take them out of the woods. So anyway, so I'll take, you know, let's just say I'll take one, I'll bring it back. I also have to gauge whether or not it'll survive when it leaves its environment, because sometimes they don't do well immediately. They just, it's pretty sad and poignant to see this mushroom that so I'm learning which ones will survive and which ones won't. I'm just like, oh wow, it's so terrible. I took this thing out and it's just not doing well. So I really try to avoid that now, but I'll bring it back and I'll go through and see which one is more robust and put that to the back of the line, and which one's most fragile, and I'll put that to the first of the line and start to photograph that first. I use a lot of pins, wires, clamps to position all of these items, and crazy glue, usually some kind of crazy glue in there, so I can keep them steady. So when I'm photographing, I like to have everything in super hyper focus, so from the front to the back of the subject. So to do that, I use focus stacking, which is taking images from the front of the subject to the back of the subject at different focal lengths. And then there's software that I use called Helicon Focus, and that I can upload all the images into that software and it will merge them all into one image. And then that's when I see if everything looks good. If something moved, I'll have to reshoot it, because you can't have any part of any image different than the rest. If it moves, it's gonna be blurry or add a little something to the image that you'll see that, oh yeah, that's blurry. Or if it's sometimes there's a bug in there that's walking around while I'm taking the picture, and so it's in every single image. So when it's combined into one image, you just see this line of a bug, dot 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 dot, which is kind of cool. Sometimes I leave the bug in, but and then I'll take that and I shoot. I want everything on a black background, just so that's all you're looking at, and the black contrast really makes them stand out. So I will mask out all of the subject and then drop in the same black background for every image that I have. So,
and we'll pull them up now too. I'll open your website and we can take a look at some of them. So we'll go to maybe butterflies first.
Sure.
And these are quite stunning. So this is called dramatically lit. Like this is macro photography, which means like focus, like you mentioned. And you explained how the black background is so that they pop, and that absolutely makes sense. Had you always done your nature photography in this way, or
no? It was never studio. I never did studio. I always went out and took pictures out in nature. I never brought in my studio. Early on, I tried it on white. I tried it on glass for reflection, different colored glass, things like that. And this is the one that's really, it's the look I'm going for.
It's so cool. I'm just looking at this. Is amazing. Like, wow, coming in for a landing too is a great title.
Yes. Yeah, that was a moth that I found out my husband found out in the shed, and I brought it in and photographed it immediately. It had been deceased, so I had to. That's how we found it, was that crooked little look, and then there's another photo of it where we kind of laid it out flat and put some pins in it and let it dry flat, and that's when I shot it flat too. So.
Oh my gosh, you're brave. When I see even like, I don't know, a dead bug in my house, I'm like, I'm gonna leave it till the relative visits in like 6 months. Just keep a cup over there and cover. Here you are laying out the wings and pinning it. I'm very impressed. You're a brave lady.
Oh no, it's no problem.
Oh my gosh, and this is just stunning. So as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about, the number of photos on my phone, even like probably over 10,000. And I have I just click away. But for me, it does add something to my experience and to my engagement with the experience I'm in to be capturing photos of it. I wondered if that's part of, your motivation, or I'm especially thinking about, peak COVID times, everyone getting out into nature, and like what photographing that could mean, like whether these are associated with any memories for you? Just stuff along those lines.
I think just to go a little deeper, a lot of why I took pictures probably was because this is what you said early on in your statement or question, was I was always very shy when I was young, and I'm not shy anymore, but and I also have depression, so, and probably a little anxiety. So I think the camera always helped me be there and be a part of it, but without having to actually engage.
Yes.
So I could document it, I could be a part of it, but I wasn't, people didn't ask much of me, which is that's kind of how I liked it. And so now, with me doing the studio work, I kind of see my subjects as me back when I was young. And I thought I was pretty special, but I didn't want to, you don't want to go out there and make a big deal about yourself or whatever. So I go out and bring these things from nature to show people. And so it's sort of I'm just it's like me helping the little person, just saying, hey, look at these guys, these are pretty cool, you should check these out, or you don't have to, I don't really care. If you don't, you don't, but I just want people to see things that go unnoticed in daily life. And maybe that's how I felt when I was young, because I was shy, and I just get passed over and stuff. So that's why I'm going out now, and even weird. I mean, I shoot beautiful things, I shoot weird things. I'll show you one weird thing.
Yes. I love a weird thing.
So this one, this is a moss covered shoe.
Oh my gosh.
So I was out looking for mushrooms, of course, and came across this nasty. I'm surprised I can hold it now. I think
I was seriously like, I don't know how you're touching it.
It was gross. So I saw that, and it was next to, oh wait, bear with me. Let me see if I can, I don't think I have it here. Now so next to it was this creepy little plastic doll hand that was burnt and had a wire coming out of it, and then a flashlight. So those three things were next to each other in the woods. And I was so creeped out by it. And I was like, oh shoot, I can't leave these here. I can't leave these here. And I walk with plastic bags in case I find something cool. So anyone had just like picked it up and was like, yeah.
Thank goodness for the plastic bag to
I
be
know. So anyway, so that's I'll show you that picture in a minute, but that's one of my favorite images that I took.
So cool. And I absolutely just love the way you shared about, your childhood and the camera as a way to engage in a space. And then also the way that you flip that on its head with creating platform for these little, ecosystems of life that are happening around us that we don't always notice. I think that's so special. And I just am so thankful that you shared that.
Thanks. And I love it when people see my work, and then that's what they say, like immediately, which is great. They're just like, oh my God, when I walk around, I am gonna look now. I'm gonna look at little stuff and notice little things, and people will send me images and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's awesome.
And I think what's also true to what you said is like, we all have a voice and it manifests maybe differently. And so even if you don't want to be the loudest person in the room, when people look at your photos, they get to see the world the way that you see it, and it can then change the way that they see it, or like encourage them, like you said, to look closer. And it's amazing how when we find our right avenue for speaking up, like the effect that it can have on everyone around us. I think that's really powerful. So cool. So
do you mind if I just show this image real quick of the shoe before we move on?
No, I would love that.
Okay, let me So I'm just going to share. So here's the, can you see the shoe?
Yes. Oh my
Okay.
gosh, the photograph, so cool.
And you can see that too. Yeah, and it's, so it's funny because I posted this on Instagram, and I think I posted one without the hanging piece of the root. And I asked everybody, it's like, okay, which one do you like? And everybody, most people like the root hanging in anyway. So it was kind of a neat to interact with people to see which one people liked. And some people got into the details of like, I like seeing that leaf inside the shoe and all that, bring that out a little bit. So anyway, it was kind of fun.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think that the interactive part it's so cool for people to realize that they can too be part of the process or have
Right.
an opinion like on things that they didn't realize they would care
Yeah.
about.
Mm-hmm.
So you create these awesome works. I see them on your website. Do you print them? Do you display them in your house? Do you give them to friends? Do you sell them? Like what do you do from there?
So I sell them. I print everything. I'm gonna bring up a picture here. Well, maybe I'm not. 1 second. Come on. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
All right, maybe this will work. Let me see if I can share this. Can you see that?
Yes.
Booth shot.
Yes.
So,
wow.
so I print everything on metal, or have it printed on metal. That in that process, me just picking that out was a little bit led by not fear, but I didn't want to print on paper because then it would just lead to a lot of other processes. I just didn't want to be part of my art. So I didn't want to have to mat. I didn't want to have to frame. I just wanted to sell my image. So I did a bunch of tests on printing on aluminum, and have gone through a couple vendors, and have found one that's working for me right now, which is great, which is Miller's Lab in Kansas. But yeah, so this is a sample. So the last 2 years, I've been lucky enough to take a leave of absence from my day job at Smithsonian. Wow. And spend 10 weeks in Scottsdale, Arizona, January, February, and March, to be in this art show that has, it's called Celebration of Fine Art, and it has 100 artists under one big tent. And it's 7 days a week, 10 to 6 every day. So you go in and you set up your booth and hang all your work, and you're there every day. And so you're selling your work. So I bring in, you can see in this image, I have a tiny little studio set up over here with like a little light box, and then a couple of small little battery operated lights that I can use. And I'll bring items in and shoot here. And then on my big Wacom tablet, I can just edit my photos there while I'm working. So I can get some work done too, which is really nice.
Yes.
So,
this looks like such a like wonderful experience. Was it your first time doing something like that, being part of a show? Like
yeah, for that long, yeah, for sure. It was yeah, I was pretty nice. Once again, I'm trying to undo my screen sharing. Hold on, stop. So my husband is a sculptor, and he's been at the show for 10 years. And so I was building up enough a body of work so I could be a part of it also. And I applied, and I luckily got in. So hopefully I'll be going this year. I don't know quite yet if I'm able to, but hopefully I will. So,
Yes, that's
yeah.
so cool. I'm curious. So, you had mentioned, as a growing up, being like a formerly shy person, and I know that's not part of your story now, but I'm interested in the human interactions you got to have there. I think it must be so insightful for you when you see people like react with your work, and you get to talk with the people who make the purchases. I wonder if you have any memories from that, or any cool takeaways.
Um, hmm. No, it is really nice to see, the positive reactions to the work. Like people will walk around the corner and they'll go, whoa, holy, look at all that. That's so pretty, oh, it's so colorful. And then they'll start to go in and look a little further. And, I have some fun photos in there, like the shoe. And so I try to break it up a little bit, they're not just pretty photos of flowers or whatever. But so it's nice to see people look a little deeper into the photos. It's really nice to see people like the photos that I like, which is really fun. And then there's people who just couldn't care less. They walk on by, they're like, eh. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Go ahead if it's not for you. And I know photography is really hard. It's a hard sell. And I'm trying to make it accessible for everybody, and not so scary, not an off-putting purchase. So, my prices are pretty reasonable for art of that size. So I'm trying to make it, selling it, buying it more accessible, and the subject matter. So it's all one big piece.
That's awesome. If you were to give any advice, or have you learned anything from these in-person interactions, if there's an artist, a photographer who maybe wants to put themselves out there in that way, but is a little nervous about it or hesitant, what would your encouragement be to them?
I don't know. I mean, I only did a couple like street weekend shows, weekend fairs before I did this big one. But those are, like applying to like an art fair weekend show. That's always a really good start and a really good way to see people's reaction to your work. Because I think I did, maybe I only did like 4 before I did this show in Arizona. But yeah, it's good. And also you have to know your go to a market where you think your work will sell. So I do sell work here on the East Coast, but the people out west are really, really good art buyers. I mean, it's weird. On the East Coast, it's more contemporary, which is what I am. But they also like contemporary in Arizona or the West Coast or Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's so important to remember that like there is a niche in this like market of the world that your work is going to mean a lot to, and that it's going to be worth even more to that group. So it's worth taking the time to like figure out where that niche is, and connect with them specifically. I used to work in the TV measurement industry. So we talk about ratings, and it's like, well, if you want to rate woman ages 18 to 35, like it's going to cost you more than if you want to reach the whole world, because you have to get more targeted. So there's a little bit more maybe sweat equity to do that research on the forefront, but it's going to be worth it for you and your satisfaction when people connect with your work and it means
you can't just go to the wrong place and just like, why how come nobody likes my work here? It's like, well, it's not the kind of place that that's not what they're looking for.
Group. They're not your good.
That's right. They're not your focus group. Exactly. I forgot what I was going to say. I was going to say something about that. Go ahead.
Something on that point. But I do want to just like one more thing on human relationships. You talked about going into the woods on your way to work, like whenever you can fit in the time and finding these specimens. I wanted to ask too, do you ever go with people, and like in what ways is that helpful? In what ways is it distracting? Like, have you gotten inspiration from seeing
Yeah.
their eyes?
I usually don't go with people. I do try to get people to go with me. Uh, they usually don't want to, which, I mean, I don't try too hard, but I did have a friend go with me a couple weeks ago. It was like one of the first times, somebody, not first time, but a rare time somebody went with me. And it was fun because he and I were totally on the same wavelength of looking for small stuff. So it was really enjoyable. But then I also went like with a hiking group, and and I was like, oh, look at that. And they're like, leave no trace. And I was like, what? You mean I can't take that mushroom? They're like, yeah, we don't like for you to take it in this group. I'm like, okay.
Like taking saving your location on your map for later. You're like,
Yeah, right. I was like, yep. Okay, I'll be back later.
oh my gosh. Another gotta find your niche kind of situation.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah. And when I go out hiking, I'm not hiking. I'm walking very slowly through the woods with no clear path. So that's all.
Such an adventure. No,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. So I will pivot a little bit now because I want to make sure we give some attention to your very cool day job at the Smithsonian and in exhibits. But I will go back to your first story to begin. You mentioned that you studied, was it called industrial design?
Yeah.
So maybe I'm the only person who grew up under a rock, but I certainly didn't know that was a option of study. I wondered how you even got into the space of pursuing it in your education.
That I was swayed by my parents. I wanted to be a photographer, and I bet they wouldn't even remember now that we had this discussion, but they said, well, we know that's a really competitive world, and we're afraid it'll be too competitive. You know, why don't you, I don't even know if they even knew what industrial design was, or they're the ones who thought of it. So I can't even remember how, but it was, and so they just said, we want you to major in that. That's a better education than photography. And I was like, okay. And you know what? They were right. It was a great education in critical thinking, and it was all about product design, and how humans interact with what you use, and then you had to make models to build your products that you were designing. So we had to learn that too, and that was great. And that's what led me to model making and working in films. And I didn't do industrial design at all. I just ended up using the model making part.
So they're different. Industrial design and model. Can you speak to that? Like,
industrial design and model making?
Yes.
Yeah, industrial design is like being a designer, and then you have somebody who actually makes the things that you design. So, or the prototype of the thing that you design. So when you design something, you need to make some kind of prototype to show it, a physical piece to show it. And so that's, those were classes within industrial design. They wanted you to be able to build the prototypes of the designs that you were creating. So I wasn't great at designing. I was not, just seeing other people in the class, I was like, I don't think I'll be good at this. But I did like making things. I've always made things. In my childhood, I was always in the basement making something, making a lot of noise, hammering, sawing, and I'd come upstairs and my parents were like, what are you making? I'm like, stuff. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So
things to make me happy.
That's so cool. I would mix like spices and stuff, but the hammers and
Really?
nails kind of stayed away from.
That's great.
That's pretty epic. So the analogy I'm getting then is like the industrial designer is like the architect maybe, and the model maker is like the construction team. Like they're taking.
No, actually it's even less than that. It's the person who would make the house to present to the client, the model of the house.
Okay.
Yeah. Even less than.
in the theater world, in like the LA Hollywood world, then are you making the set?
No, so I was making so like on Darkman, there was a fight scene in a building that was under construction, and they needed some miniatures made. They were using a special effects technique called intravision, and they needed some scale models made, and they would shoot the scale models and then input the actors in it later on. And so the scale models, they needed like little porta potties that were that big, and so I hand sculpted porta potties and then made a mold of that and made a bunch of casts of them, and then placed them inside these buildings under construction, and just like little 55-gallon drums, ladders, and things like that. So it was most of it was all scale models, small scale models. There was a TV airplane disaster movie that I worked on called Miracle Landing, and it was I made small scale fake luggage. Oh, it's not here. Small scale fake luggage, which I still have some of the parts. And they were in a scene where the roof rips open on this plane, which was built in scale, and the luggage would fall out and all that. And made small scale life vests. And
so much fun. I can't imagine going into work each day like, what kind of miniature things or models am I making? I think what I love about your approach too is that you went from Hollywood to retail to museums. Like it's I get the sense that for you was more about the making, and the what of it was like it could be more fluid. I feel like I was in this company that we measured retail and we measured TV, and they're like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I just like to measure. Like, I don't care.
There you go. See,
in front of me, like I just want to measure. But that was like a pretty, I keep saying it in this conversation, seems but a pretty niche opinion. Like not most people had a specific area. So I love that you kind of like experienced it all. And I wonder though, if there were specific things you really enjoyed about each of those, because like Nordstrom versus Hollywood versus Smithsonian, there must be some differences.
I think Hollywood and Smithsonian for making models are the exact opposite in technique. So for films, it had to look good for like 2 seconds and it was going to get blown up. And then for the Smithsonian, our models have to look good with people in front of it, staring at it for years. So, and it had to be fireproof. So it's very, very different model making techniques are used. I had to learn all new ways of how to make things not catch on fire, and they had to look good from most angles and couldn't be toxic. So exact opposite of Hollywood. And Nordstrom was mostly just constructing. I don't even know what we made. I don't even know what we made at Nordstrom, but just big props, goofy things, lots of goofy big things, flashy things, pretty easy stuff. So.
Oh, it's still, I mean, so interesting. I certainly love like the window dressings of those places. That you have had those hands-on experiences. So it sounds like with the Smithsonian and making sure that your exhibits didn't kill anybody, there's like a bit of apprenticeship maybe involved. Was it a tough sell to go from retail Hollywood to the museum world, or is that a pretty normal transition?
It was a big education for me. It wasn't I think the people that hire can see talent. And if they see that you can make things, they know they can teach you how they're supposed to be made in the museum world. So as long as you have that innate ability, or you've worked hard enough to get that ability, you can usually see that, and you can usually just reapply it to a different field.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the way hiring should happen. So it's great to know that the Smithsonian is doing it that way. I'd like to understand more about the Smithsonian Exhibits department, what their core responsibilities are, and how you fit into them.
Okay, so I work for Smithsonian Institution Exhibits. it's basically like an in-house design and production firm for exhibits at the Smithsonian. So each museum can hire us. So we have to charge back to our clients. So we have to validate our existence. So we have to make money, but we're charging ourselves. Complicated, but it's the way it is. And so they hire us to either design a whole exhibit and build it, which is kind of rare. We have about 45 people in our office, so we can't build something that big, but we can build large components of an exhibit. Or we can write an exhibit or edit it, or we can do all the graphics. So all the panels you see on the wall with all the, all the didactic panels that you see in exhibits, our office does all that. And then our fabrication shop can make all the cases, any kind of weird structure, very custom structures, very normal boxing cases. We can do a huge variety of that. And then where I work is in the 3D studio, and that's really a lot of it is one of a kind. I mean, everything else is kind of one of a kind, but one of a kind piece for an exhibit. Like, I'm trying to think of what I did. So something I did many years ago was work on the gem and mineral exhibit. And I did a couple mine recreations. So I would integrate real rock with fake rock that I would make. So the mineral science department would have a collection of rocks from this particular mine, and we would glue and attach all these real rocks to a structure. I would fill it in with fake rocks, and to make it look like one solid mine, things like that. We do fake trees, plants, lots of touchable models if they need. There was like a narwhal that was on exhibit, like a giant narwhal model. We didn't do that, but they wanted to travel the exhibit, and they wanted to have a small touchable version of it. So we 3D scanned the narwhal, and then did a 3D print of the narwhal so people could touch it.
I hope that was around the time of Elf, the movie. I feel like that put narwhals on the map for me.
It was actually, that was a recent exhibit, which is kind of funny, but yeah.
Gosh, that's so cool. So I read somewhere that your office manages like each year over like 200 projects, and they can be something that takes the whole 40-something person team, like you said, or just like smaller components of exhibits. And I wondered how much say you have in like which ones you're working on, or which ones have been some of your favorites, kind of some of those details.
I think what you get to work on, it's either who's good for the job, who it fits their capabilities, or their schedule. They have time in their schedule to do it. Those are the two big things. And we don't. Sometimes we get a little look on when it's just coming in the door to see what people are asking for. Usually we don't, but somebody will come in and say, "Oh, can you do a large copy of this coin?" Sure, we can do that. And then we're like, okay, Chris will do that, and because he can machine it and do all that stuff. And so we're usually asked, do you think you can make this? Mm-hmm. And then we ask more questions, do you have a real sample? Can we scan it? Can we make a mold of it? Can we, all this stuff. So
helps to come up with the pricing too, probably.
we have to come up with hours it takes also. So we have to put in what we time and materials, and then, our estimator will put it all in and figure out how much it costs.
Wow. And so, as I understand it, I guess, different teams will come to you with requests, and there's only so much capacity. So you guys have to do a little bit of maybe like vetting or the assessing process you spoke about. but also does your team have a responsibility to get the word out about what you can do internally,
Yeah.
like to get work? What is that like? And what do you have to play an active role in that too?
That's a very good question. So we actually have an internal marketing team
Wow.
in our office. And that's the whole reason we have a website. It's because the marketing team worked on it. So I I do a lot of the photography that's on the website also. So I can use my photo abilities at work. So, and then I think, upper management will go out and do a lot of meetings with people. Um, we're fairly well known within the museum, but we always have to, sort of remind people that we're there and that we have these capabilities.
Right.
So,
Has
we get a lot of repeat clients that keep coming back to us. So
that's key. Nice to know too that they really like the work that's being done. Always accolade. Has it always been structured that way with this internal team that has to, or yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could see
and always an internal team that has to what? Sorry,
it has to like pitch itself internally and charge these other teams to get this exhibit work done, or is that a newer way that Smithsonian goes?
Our office has been around, I think, since the 70s. It used to be each museum had their own people that did this kind of work, or they would hire it out. And then in the 70s, we became it was called Exhibit Central. And then at some point in the, I don't know, late 90s or 2000s, we had to start charging back. We always charged for materials, but we never, I think we charged like $1 for an hour for time or something like that.
Wow.
So, but it's all about, bookkeeping. So it's
a necessary evil.
a necessary evil. Yep, it is.
That's so cool and just so special to be part of such a long history with the Smithsonian Institute. Yep. I wondered if we may take a look at that website. You could walk us through some of the projects.
Let me bring that up. So, all right. Are you seeing the 3D studio?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just like I don't even think these are any really links on this page, but this is the page for my office. You can see on here the skulls. This is a project with our Human Origins exhibit. We did a lot of work to build that whole hall, Human Origins Hall, which opened maybe 10 years ago. And but then they wanted to do a traveling version of it, and it was just kind of neat. They wanted to do a traveling version that went to libraries, and what the exhibit does is they'll travel these five different skulls, and people can check them out. So they can check the skulls out. So literally, we built a case for them that they can travel in, and so the museum gives every library that this exhibit went to a copy of these five skulls, which is really cool. So these skulls were all scanned in some way or another, probably photogrammetry, and then we 3D printed all of them, and we hand painted every skull. So we did 20 sets of 5, so that was 100 skulls, and that was like 2 or 3 of us working on that. But in our studio we also can build some little we do a lot of bracketing for objects. So this is just basically a bracket for a piece of clothing. Carve it out of ethafoam and fit it to this piece of clothing. And this is very funny that these lungs are here, which I didn't even realize. These are my lungs, and they're They had nothing to do with Smithsonian.
You mean like your lungs of your
Yes. So I had for some reason, I don't remember, a bunch of years ago, I had a CT scan of my lungs, and I asked the doctor if I could have a copy because I had the ability to process it into an actual 3D model and print it.
Oh my
And so I cut little holes in it so you could see, all the little bronchi or whatever those are called. But I'm just now realizing they put that non-Smithsonian thing in our 3D studio. It's pretty funny.
That's amazing. Infiltrating the system, Carolyn.
And then down here, I won't play it, but there's a little movie I made for, I was sculpting a giant squid eye, which is about the size of a soccer ball. And this project was actually done for the docents in the Ocean Hall at the Natural History Museum. And they had been using a soccer ball to show people the size of the eye of the giant squid on their docent part. And one of the docents donated the money for us to make this giant eye. So I met with the collection manager who had a giant eye in his collection, and took some photographs, got some cutaway drawings from him so I could get a better idea of the shape of it, and then I sculpted it all in ZBrush, and then we 3D printed it and painted it. So it's probably still on the docent card there.
So a few different words there that you mentioned that I want to break down. First, well, what's the docent, and was there a docent cart or a docent card or
it's a cart? Sorry, a docent is a volunteer that just helps interpret the exhibit for people. So if you go to a museum, there's sometimes people will walk around and help interpret paintings for you, or what's that giant whale doing up there. Sometimes they're scheduled tours, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they'll have a cart, C-A-R-T, and they'll have samples of things on the cart for people to touch or look at and talk about.
And one of the docents, was it, donated the funds to create this eye? That's so cool. Like that's pretty remarkable. And
I know.
A good affirmation for anyone listening who has some extra funds, who wants to see the museum do something. Apparently this is an avenue you can explore. So that's wonderful. And you mentioned that the collections manager had an eyeball already available. So had the octopus's actual squid's actual eyeball already. What was the what's the value add when you have the real one to have a 3D model of it as well? Is it for that tactile experience, or was it the eye was not on display and this could be? Do you know those details?
I don't know those details. The eye was not on display, and it wasn't the eye for there was a giant squid on display, but there wasn't an eye. And so I think they were just, the reason they wanted to show the eye was that's, with all living creatures, that's a pretty important part of, not living, but not all living creatures, but most of us have eyes, but that's how we engage with each other. So I think showing the museum goers the size of the eye will help them relate to the size of this giant squid. And so
yeah, and it's funny that we mentioned this story, because before we got on the call, you had showed me a different eye that you'd worked on that was opposite of being the size of the soccer ball. It was the size of like a millimeter, right? Like super tiny, and was blown up. And so a wide range of eye related projects clearly coming through.
Yeah, I can actually show you that one. That one is, where's that? Where's the squid eye? Not squid eye. There's the squid eye. This guy. Let's see. This is something that lives in the deep sea. It's called a paraphonema, and in reality, it's about a quarter of an inch long at its longest length. This part here is the eye, so that is the whole eyeball right here. It has 16 retina, and all the retina have these crystalline cones that go out to the surface of the eye and form lenses all over it. So it's a big compound eye. But this what makes it special is that it can see in near darkness. So I worked directly with scientists who's studying it. It was quite an interesting project to work on. This is the critter right here.
Oh,
But it was really neat. She gave me one. She's like, oh, I have one. She gave me in a vial. I still have it. And I used a macro lens to shoot it and to help me understand it. She provided a lot of drawings. It was very interactive discussions while I was sculpting between her and me, and it was great. It was a great project.
I think that interactivity can be such a helpful part of the learning process and
Yeah.
memory. And so just what a great contribution to the museum experience for people to get to have that
Right.
interaction as well. I read, so your office really charges itself with connecting the American people and international audiences with the richness of Smithsonian content and collections. And I wondered, if that could be personalized. Like, what does that mean for you? Why do you keep waking up jazzed to do exhibits work?
That it's probably just like we were talking earlier. I just like to make things, and if they're interesting things, actually, yeah, everything's interesting. That's what it is I find everything that I make interesting. So to be able to, just like my photography, to put it out in the public and have people engaged and help explain what things are it's a lot of fun. It's fun to, every once in a while I'll do a Google search on this guy and find people's Instagram photos of it and things like that. People took pictures of it, and then that's just nice that a lot of people from around the world, especially since it is the Smithsonian, we have such an international client, that they see all the work that we do, and so it's pretty special to know that people are out there looking at all. I have there was another in the ocean hall at Natural History. I sculpted an oarfish, which is I don't, they can be like 10 to 30 feet long, I think. Don't hold me to it, but I built one that was about 10 to 12 feet long. Bright silver fish with electric blue dots and orange dots and orange fins. Really neat. So that's one project that I absolutely loved. I mean, it was a huge challenge. It's still on exhibit. It still looks good. So I'm thrilled with it. And that's been up for 15 years. So.
Oh my gosh, that's such a cool legacy to be creating with the Smithsonian. I wondered if you have any, so we talked about, advice for photographers and getting themselves out there, but also in the same vein, maybe people who are passionate about model making or passionate about the museum world. Is there any encouragement you would share with them, or any wisdom that you've learned over the years about getting involved in this sort of like museum ecosystem?
I think, I'm trying to think. Do you want me to unshare? Oh,
Sure.
there we go.
Fine.
So I know, well, don't ask me about my office because it's super it's super competitive. But you can intern in our office, and we now actually have a paid internship too. So,
That always helps.
so that helps for, people who can't afford just to go to Washington for free.
Truly.
So, this year we've had a couple that this year's the first year we've done that internship, which is unfortunate because it was during COVID, but we're still, um, they're still around. The interns are, and I think they're having a great time. I'm so happy they're getting paid. It just brings in a whole different group of people for us who wouldn't normally have access. So it's wonderful. Um, uh, and so, yeah, just for model making, just make stuff. Just, I don't know. I find jobs where making stuff is your job. It doesn't matter where it is or what it is. So, as long as you're doing some kind of production, it doesn't have to be monotonous production, but some kind of production where you need to have a work ethic and you have to be reliable and you have to be talented. So
Yes, I think that's a
basic
great,
stuff.
yeah, that's a great way to apply like just having hustle in the world
Yeah,
of mom. Like, like you could collect garbage and make stuff out of it if you don't have
yeah,
resources. Like there's
yeah.
something to be made out of everything. And so I feel
Mhm.
like that's a wonderful takeaway. Carolyn, this has been so special. I love to end with asking one final two-part question to get in as much as I can. One part is, what do you want people to leave knowing about you and about your work? And the other part is, what are you looking forward to?
Um, hmm. Yeah, I just in my work, I just want people to go out and notice small things in life and don't just whiz by things and take it for granted. Um, it's a pretty complicated world that we live in, and if you start to notice what makes up this world, it's just mind-boggling, just to the minute detail. It's not all about us, and there's so much to learn in this, even in your small immediate world. Um, and as far as my own personal work, um, I I think right now I'm trying to figure out how to, well, I would like to do photography, after I retire. I would love to be known as a photographer more than a model maker, but um, I just want to keep getting better, better and better at it, and keep exploring new possibilities of things to photograph. I might not always shoot in this way, so I'm always open to some other way. But when I do find a little focus, I'll go all in and you know really explore it. And that's where I am right now in this part of doing the studio work with a lot of the natural objects. I do, like with the shoe, things like that really kind of interest me. Weird things and that have stories behind them. Like the shoe I called evidence. So just to spark people's, I mean, they already look at it and just get creeped out. So something bad happened there. So when in truth, I'm pretty sure I know what happened. It was it was a site where somebody was dumping all their stuff. But to me, it just looked like it conjured up horror stories and just kind of intrigue, and you wanted to know the story behind the shoe and all that, and why was there only one, and how long did it take for moss to grow on it and all that.
Right. Maybe next you start partnering with a writer who you find the weird thing, you photograph it, and they
Mhm.
create a whole novel of
Yep,
adventure based on that
yep.
one shoe. I'm here for it. I'm so excited to get to, now that I know you, continue to follow how your work evolves. And next time I notice something, I'll be thinking of this conversation and your inspiration. So Carolyn, thank you
Cool.
so much. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you better. And I'm really excited to share your story.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate it.